What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Small Lake City Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson, and this week we are dabbling back into the art community with Utah's favorite three first-named artist, Mr. Bryan Mark Taylor. Now, Bryan has had an amazing career. He has studied from so many different people in so many different aspects and has been so scientific about the way that he approaches his artistic pursuit and is always trying something new, going back to different styles, and has actually more recently gone back full circle to his childhood roots. It's kind of an interesting story of how I got introduced to him and how I found out about him and how it was through Micah at Anthony's, but kind of a small world, small Lake City moment of how that all came to be as well. Such a great down-to-earth person, talked about how he got into art at such an early age, was able to study with people that he called peers, but were, college students to him, being in sixth grade, and then him living in San Francisco for a number of years, and then coming back here. So such a unique perspective, such a great guy. Ended up starting his own easel company as well that's done super well and been very successful. So definitely a great episode, and hope everybody enjoys it. So enjoy me and Bryan Mark Taylor's conversation. Enjoy. We've been on podcasts before.
Many times.
I assumed as much. Have you been on Jeff's podcast?
Yep.
Okay. That's one I've listened to a couple episodes, and that's honestly what got me more into, because obviously talking to John, who apprenticed under Jeff, he had a lot of great stories and insights, but then it wasn't until his podcast, he has everybody on, and it's funny to follow his podcast because then I'll find new artists and I'll follow them. And so now I have this collection of artists that I've been following, and which only makes my appetite to paint things more, but then I have less time to paint. It's a battle. I wish I could have just 2 days of my week just dedicated to painting, but
yeah,
I'll find 2 hours here and there and it works.
Well, that's good. You got to do what you can do.
Bryan Mark Taylor, the three first names. I feel like when I've talked to people about that we were going to record, I would always get, I think I even did it when I got here, call you Mark Bryan Taylor and Bryan Mark Taylor. And then when I said it to Howard, he's like, it's three first names. It's hard no matter how you spin it, but excited to have you on. But it's also such a funny story and a small Lake City moment of how I found out about you. Cause I was telling you when I walked in, but took my mom to Anthony's to go meet Micah, to go see, Anthony's in itself and all the amazing things that are in there. And so Micah, was, again, always going through everything and teaching us so much. And then he kind of left us on our own, and we kept seeing these still life photos, because even my mom was taken back. She's like, I usually don't like still life art, but I really like these. And then we would see your landscapes, and she's like, oh, I like these too. It's the same person. So naturally I sprint down and find Micah and bring him up. And he's like, oh, it's actually a funny story of how I got introduced to Bryan, because I saw some of his paintings come in and someone said that he was down in Alpine. He's like, oh, I thought he was in the Bay Area, in California. And then you guys start talking, and he tells me, he's like, oh, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Bountiful. He's like, what do you mean you're from Bountiful? I'm from Bountiful. And then he's like, well, where do you live now? He's like, oh, I'm in Alpine. He's like, I'm in Alpine. And he's like, well, when did you go to high school? And you mentioned that your wife went to Viewmont. He had gone to Viewmont, same ages, just same places, different, same places, same times, but never really got to know each other super well. So it's funny how that all kind of came together. And you were born and raised here, moved to California, came back, and now get to be fun part of this art world of Utah and Salt Lake, and how unique that is.
Yeah. And it's been a fantastic time getting to know Micah, and, just, they do a fantastic job there at Anthony's, and it's fun to be a part of that, cause they're celebrating their 40th anniversary, and it's really neat to, Mike is a good friend and one of the more interesting people you'll ever meet. He's got so many different stories about all kinds of objects and histories and things like that. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, he told me, actually, it was a story he told me after we recorded when we were leaving Edison. He's like, maybe I'll come back and tell you, but he's like, there's one time I was flying into it had to have been Spain. To Spain, and if anybody who knows Micah knows he's a yerba mate enthusiast, to say the least.
Yep.
And so he says, I landed in Spain. There's this yerba place I was going to go to, and I walk in, and then waiting in line, and this guy kind of just starts talking to me, and we start talking. He's like, oh, well, how do you know Spanish? He's like, I went on an LDS mission, but now I've been studying in London, and I spent a ton of time in Spain. I've been writing a book on Sorolla, so many things. And they end up talking for an hour and a half about I mean, just
What
everything and
just
everything and
every,
every
yeah,
just a typical
right.
Micah conversation,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then so this guy's like, "Hey, I got to take off, but nice to meet you. Have a good trip. See you around, maybe. I don't know." And the Micah goes up to like pay her to leave, and the guy's like, how do you know Lionel?" He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "That was Lionel Messi. How did you
Oh,
know?
you're
Like,
kidding.
do you know him?" He's like, "No, but who is that?" He's like, "How do you not know who Lionel Messi is?" And so just literally was sitting around in this yerba mate place
No
talking with
kidding.
Lionel Messi, had no idea who he was.
Holy cow.
So in typical Micah fashion.
Oh no.
How did you originally meet Micah?
Well, it's basically through a podcast.
Okay.
It was we discovered that story you just told about us meeting was through through his podcast,
Okay.
and so we kind of discovered it right on air, which was kind of fun.
Oh, that's hilarious. I've had
That we have this kind of common history, or we're both from Bountiful and all this.
it's interesting, and I've said this before many times, but like Small Lake City is a joke in Utah in general, and I mean especially Salt Lake. But once you have a podcast called that, and you chase that energy, it's amazing. Like the stories that I like, or just the connections that end up popping up naturally. So that's so fun that you guys could have that. But I mean, I know that you are. I mean, like we said, I mean, born and raised here, moved to California, and came back. But maybe start from the beginning of, I mean, growing up here and how, I mean, you found your passion for art, and maybe it was after that. But would love to hear kind of how you found a brush in hand and found that passion.
Yeah, so I mean, it happened really early for me. When I was 8, I asked for an oil painting set for Christmas, and
Normal thing for an 8-year-old to ask
yeah,
for Christmas.
exactly
Yeah,
right. And part of it I have to credit Bob Ross for that. That's discovered, between two different channels. We only had a couple channels back then,
yeah.
right? And so I think it was probably switching between cartoons or something like that, and I'd see this painting, and it just captivated me.
Just staring. I'd imagine this 8-year-old staring, watching Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Their parents are like,
Wait, what?
"What's he doing?" Like, "Do you want to join in?" You're like, "I can do that."
Well, and it's interesting because I was already drawing before I kind of introduced to this whole, oil painting thing. But that's my journey of oil painting. But I was drawing even before that time. So it's very obviously a lot of kids, they start drawing when they're, almost every kid
Yeah,
draws, right? It's just the interesting thing is those that keep doing it past, those kind of teenage years. A lot of people usually give up around sixth grade, but it's those that kind of still find something in it that really captivates them. And that was certainly my case, that it just kept growing and growing. Like in third grade, there was a session where they had all the third graders go in a room together, all do a drawing, and then they selected just a few kids to have like this extracurricular art class. And so I was one of those kids that was selected, and so that was kind of my first foray into art. Like, I guess they recognized some talent that I
yeah.
may have had, and even though I had no zero training, and um, I just fell in love with it and just kept going. And so by the time I was in sixth grade, I started taking classes down in Salt Lake twice a week. It was kind of a serious art courses where I was with college students,
Wow.
and I just really kind of started to take off. Just loved every minute of it. It was just fantastic. So, and I was actually learning things like figure drawing, and also abstract drawing
Hmm.
and conceptual kind of art. Uh, Although I didn't fully obviously understand that what it meant, but the person that was running that academy was really trying to kind of push me into a certain direction. Sadly, all those drawings that I had, that I did during those couple of years at that academy, you have to sign something where they can keep them.
Oh, that's so. Imagine looking yourself in the mirror and being like, "I stole drawings and artists from a sixth grader." Like it's like the art
And
equivalent of stealing candy from a
I
baby.
know, because it's literally, I have like maybe 200 drawings of that period of time that I'll never see, unfortunately. But I do remember, just experiences with them and certain
Yeah.
kind of aha moments. And I remember trying to tackle a staircase and trying to get the perspective right on that. And those are as an 8-year old, they're really kind of eye-opening moments. Uh, and I just wish I had that history, little piece of history back. I've tried to track down, but
There's no
anyway,
way.
somebody's got a bunch of
If
stuff
you
of mine.
have Brian's drawings and you're holding them ransom,
Yeah,
would like to talk.
right.
And
I'd
I
love to
like,
have them back.
well, and it's interesting too, because like I think about, I mean, from your parents' perspective, I mean, as a parent, there's always the joke of like, oh, my kid came to me with their like math homework and like don't know what I'm doing. But I can't imagine like my child coming to me and being like, well, how's my like values here? Like, do you think this is too saturated or how's my composition? Being like,
Nope.
nope, not me, not anything. Because what was your parents' background?
So my dad's a dermatologist.
Okay, yep, that,
My mom's a professional mom, and so and they've been supportive, to the endeavor that, I mean, when I told them that I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, basically at 8,
yeah,
I was like, this is what I really want to do. And so they did find me that school in Salt Lake, and that's what kind of started. So that basically was a school after school, right? It
yeah.
was, but it was, twice a week. So you'd go and spend several hours, twice a week, and a real deep dive into art, which was
Yeah.
awesome.
I mean, I talked with Howard, like honestly, a lot of similar things because he grew up, I mean, like most drawing, but then he kind of talked about the time where, I mean, a lot of the kids stopped drawing. They started going like playing sports. Like, I mean, whatever they get kind of, I mean, pressured into as kids, because that's just kind of the gravitational pull of it all. And then he similarly went to his parents like, "Hey, I want to draw. I want to do this." And like, here's everything you need. We want to support you. Want to do this. I mean, especially to have someone at such a young age be so passionate about something. Like, imagine the parent being like, "You're gonna go to law school." Actually, like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that. I mean, support to go to the class and have people who are better than you try to. I mean, teach you and like have such interesting peers because like I mean, quote art during like that same years, I remember I'll never forget this. There was a seventh grade art class, Miss Owen at Clayton Middle School. She's like, we need to paint a mountain. So what do? I draw a triangle, and I'm like, here it is. She's like, look out the window. Do you see that? I'm like, oh no, but like this is what you do, and like no one ever tried. And I mean, kind of like we were talking about when I was setting up is when I first started painting in like adulthood, like I was trying. I see values, I see colors, I'm making shapes, I'm understanding all of this. And it really is interesting because I talk to friends and they're like, "Oh, like I suck at painting. Or, like I'm not an artist or I'm not creative." I'm like, you fundamentally need to find something to question all of those things you just said because if you can, you will realize how invincible of a person you are and how you can learn things and you're so much better than you
Yeah,
think you could be.
absolutely.
And I also love that, like in this, the kind of you're alluding to is, I mean, you had your childhood drawings, and then you're like, oh, well, there's some abstract things. I'm trying to learn, like trying to draw and paint stairs, and I feel like you got a really good background of painting and drawing all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, now, I mean, we know that you landed a lot on still life and landscape. But I mean, how was that
That
journey to
journey.
find that? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I also studied with an artist here in Utah who was very well known. His name was Harold DeMont Olson.
Mhm.
He's a landscape painter. But I have to back up just a little bit.
Please.
My interest really during that time was a lot in conceptual or science fiction fantasy kind of thing. I'm a Star Wars kid,
Yeah.
grew up with that, and I
Again, sounds like Howard.
oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's amazing the impact of those films and had on all of us creative types. And I think that I my initial love was doing those kinds of things, inventing things, and it's interesting. I've kind of come full circle because I do have a whole range of things that I've done, science fiction, kind of
Fun.
imaginative realism
Yeah.
type work as well. You didn't see that at Micah's place because I show that other places, and
Yeah.
I've done some work for Brandon Sanderson
Oh,
in
really
his
interesting.
books.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun, and some other authors, which has been kind of a fun side projects that I've
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, that was my initial love was like fantasy, science fiction, storytelling type art, and that's what kind of drove me in those early years. But so there's lots of different threads in my life, and that was one of them. But met Harold Olson, and I started painting landscapes, and he was kind of a big influence of that early on. That's what he loved to do, and I started to absorb some of the things that he knew about all of that. So he was kind of a contemporary of Arnold Freeberg,
Hmm.
and both of them were kind of the some of the bigger artists during that time period. Uh, and I studied with him for about 3 years, and I learned mostly with watercolor during that time.
Interesting.
So this is after school. So this is in high school. So this is after I took these lessons in Salt Lake. That was in more grade school. So I always had somebody that I was studying with all through my formative years. So I've always had these private lessons. So I had lots of hours of practice and work just before I went to college.
Wow.
So I was able to kind of hit the ground running in college. But I did. I went to BYU,
Okay.
but I butted heads a little bit with the faculty there. Again, there's this kind of push towards conceptual art, and I was more of into that storytelling. I still don't know to this day why I didn't go into illustration instead, because it would have been more of a natural fit for me.
Interesting.
But there's something about the conceptual aspect of it, the why of painting, the why of creating art, that made me stick with the fine art side instead of going into more of the narrative of illustration.
Hmm.
And so I guess there's a part of the abstraction that's always been, even from 8 years old, that has been an interest of mine. And so you'll see in my work, it is representational, but it's also is definitely up close. It has an abstraction to it. And I found that the joy in my life of painting is the abstraction, not the representation aspects
Yeah.
of the work.
And that was one thing that, again, I remember this so well from being at Anthony's, and I can't remember the exact painting, but I can see it on the wall. But again, because like you look at your like, and I can take a step back. So when I was at John's studio once, he's like, "Well, the nice thing about art is it when you have a different experience from 3 feet away, 10 feet away, and 30 feet away." And like, so a lot of yours, I mean, if you take a step back from 30 feet, it looks very traditional fine art, very traditional. I don't want to say like simple, but just like what you'd expect from a fine art piece. But then when you do get close, your marks are very like more abstract, and you do see a lot more of that detail in that painting that I saw at Anthony's, which was I think there's like a river, but there's at least this shadowy tree with like either a barn or something behind it. And like that's when I like got close. I was like, oh, like these marks are so interesting because they seem so almost like broad, but the detail it has, especially when you change your perspective, is such a different experience. So I see what you mean in like
Yes.
having that fine art appreciation, but at the end of the day, having your kind of signature abstract when you look
Yes.
at the details.
Yeah. So make sure that I have my handwriting all over the painting,
Yeah.
and so there's the strokes are unique to me in the way I see things, the way my hand, the gesture, all of that is really important to me, that it reads on that level. Most people, I think, would just enjoy the painting more as stepping back and seeing the painting. But for me, it's so much about these abstract elements, about movement, about brushstroke, the way you lay it on, the fast nature of it, or there's a certain speed
Hmm.
to the way I paint that I have to have this kind of alla prima method, so that
For
alla
those who
prima,
don't know, what is, yeah.
yeah, alla prima is means to the first. It's an Italian phrase, and it basically means everything's all wet, and it's created in kind of a single session.
Hmm.
And so a lot of my work is done that way, especially my smaller work. It's all done on location, which is kind of plein air.
Yeah, I was gonna say
And
you're a big plein air guy
yes.
because you just said I was gonna go, but then I had something come up. I think I was actually recording an episode that I know you hosted. I can't remember if you and Howard did it together, but Howard was there that you did at Alpine Park, just like a plein air morning with people.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I've been talking with John, and we want to go on a hike and go plein air painting, but it's now almost the beginning of July, and we haven't done it yet. So
Yeah.
hopefully, but yeah, I mean, I love that there's that plein air aspect of things, like the very quick side of things, because I can't paint quickly. Like I always have to sit and think and come back a lot, and that's why I'm envious of that. Um,
Yeah. It's a discipline for sure too, and it's kind of like a jazz musician, or somebody that's like a virtuoso violinist, where you just play on the fly, kind of. And that's what you're trying to do. That's the years of study that you go outdoors to do, to be able to just kind of shoot from the hip,
yeah.
and not everything's planned out, and it's not like you've gridded things out or anything like that. You just kind of work with the piece. The light's changing, things are moving, um, and that's kind of the magic of it when it all comes together. So, kind of moving into that, maybe talk a little bit about the background of how I got there was, I went to BYU. I studied some of the kind of formal elements of art, a little bit of abstraction, also representation. I would go off campus and study like the nude figure, to get that extra work, and which was really valuable for me. But I found that I needed to have a little bit more of a nuts and bolts type of school experience, and so BYU was kind of just a little bit of a springboard. But the major work that I got in the instruction was in San Francisco, the
Cool.
Academy of Art University, and that was where, especially studying with some Chinese artists,
Hmm.
just really excellent masters, Hui Han Lu or Zhao Wu, um, and also there's some other artists that grew up around in the illustration field, like Bill Mon. He actually lives.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's
Do you
close.
know Bill?
Uh, don't know him yet, but he's come up on a couple episodes. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Bill has. He was the director for fine arts in at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, and he's now retired. But it was great to work with him as well. So it's important, I think, to mention him as well. It's kind of fun that he's here close.
Yeah.
But I gained a lot from my time there at the Academy of Art, and I really, especially, I talked about these Chinese artists because they had this kind of way of moving their brush. There's a little bit of a calligraphy kind of to their
Yeah.
work, and
It's like Eastern art and Western art are, well,
kind of
Asian art and European art are very different things, and European art gets a lot of the credit. But then there's also this whole thing going on over here, and like again, like there's this
yeah,
calligraphy because their I mean, written language is art in itself of
yeah,
characters, and so that bleeds into it. But there's
yeah.
a lot more traditional elements. So like it's so interesting that you got that side of training where usually you hear so much of the other.
Yes, yeah, and I was captivated by their it's it wasn't just kind of this it wasn't impressionism in the sense where every stroke was similar like a Monet sort of painting where the brush stroke didn't necessarily have all this character to it, but as impressionism moved to Russia and then from Russia to China, it kind of went kind of around the world,
Hmm.
and then comes to San Francisco. It's interesting how that has evolved, and then it's been in my hands and other
Like a game
people.
of art telephone. It just kind of
Yeah, yeah,
changes a little bit
and
and a little bit.
it gets modified. It changes every time, and so I feel like I'm kind of I'm part of that lineage, that came from those from France to Russia to China to kind of the U.S.
Yeah.
and it's changed every single time when it's done that. So that's been kind of a fun thing. And I've been back to China, 4 or 5 times where I've been with these artists are good friends of mine, things
Cool.
like that. And so that's been kind of a fun part of my life. So that Academy of Art really emphasized painting and drawing from life. And it just, everything changed for me when it was all about painting and drawing for life. And there's this strong plein air tradition. So there's plein air artists as well, like Edgar Payne, William Wendt, um, Guy Rose, you name it. There's all these great artists here in Utah. There was uh, I'm going to draw a blank here. It'll come to me in a second. But there were a couple of artists here that were influenced by things that were going on in California or back east, in terms of the impressionists, and um, that's where I realized that Harold Olson was kind of part of that tradition a little
Hmm.
bit. So I got a little bit from him, but it was different than what I got in California. So
Because I love how you have so much instruction
I have
and
a ton.
influence from so many different
Yes,
backgrounds.
yes, totally. And so, and I don't think anybody's ever really said, "Oh, you look like so and so," or "You look like." In a lot of ways, because I've had so many influences, I never let one kind of dominate my
Hmm.
world. even during that time of the Academy of Art, before I went there, I was introduced to Richard Schmid and his work and his book Alla Prima,
Hmm.
and that had a big influence when I went into
Naturally.
school. Uh, you know, his work and just studying his books and things like that. So and he was a strong advocate of alla prima work and painting from and drawing from life. So all those kinds of there's all these kinds of threads that kind of came into my work during that time, and also during that time I still had this abstraction, and I'd say probably the most influential abstract artists for me have been Richard Diebenkorn and Wayne Thiebaud.
Hmm.
And interestingly enough, just kind of an aside, Wayne Thiebaud bought one of my pieces. Here he's 98 years old.
Wow.
Comes into the gallery and likes one of the pieces I have. That's kind of abstract, kind of
Yeah.
representational, and he just loved that line. And so that was just kind of really a fun thing to have somebody that is an art legend,
Yeah.
right? It's like Elvis buying one of your paintings or something like
Exactly. Like
that.
to come full circle, you're like, I would love to sell you this painting. Don't mind my tears coming down my face as I'm so proud of myself.
And it was one of those things. I wasn't there to see it, unfortunately. The gallery called me up though and just said, "I'm going to send you a picture of the check just to show you that Wayne Tebow bought it."
Wow.
That's how excited they were too,
Yeah.
about it.
That's fun
This
that
is
they engage with
Sacramento,
you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's just kind of a fun side note. But you know, Wayne and Diebenkorn, they've been some of those artists where if I get too representational or too illustrative or whatever, that kind of always snaps me back
Hmm.
into that, uh, into that abstraction. So, and also there's some things about the way they divide space that has always been something I've enjoyed, and that's why I'm really into cityscape painting.
Hmm.
Uh, and I've done that quite a bit. That's one of the things I'm known for is painting cityscapes, and there's a geometry there that's really interesting. There's
That intimidates me because so like when I paint, I'm a terrible drawer. And which is very backwards and I need to work on drawing and I know it, but I don't. And so I usually very rough and then I have to iterate as I paint, which is obviously not the best way to do it. And like strong geometry is always very intimidating to me. So the thought of, I mean, even in your studio, the New York one you're working on, like the thought of like seeing like the New World Trade Center and all these and trying to make it work, like I felt my anxiety get a little bit higher. But again, at the same time, like it's such a unique thing from compared to like a lot of your other landscapes, a lot of your other more still life things. It's interesting to see like the quiver of different types of paintings that you have and you enjoy it all. But then I also like that you have this like check system. You're like, hey, whoa, 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 too representational. We got to be a little more abstract. And I'm sure there's some sort of pullback from the abstract to the representational that you have as well. So I like that you keep
yes,
yourself grounded, but then also know that it all is kind of like this hodgepodge of experiences that you've had that influences everything to give you your own kind of like stamp of
yeah.
uniqueness.
Well, and I do maybe a wider range of paintings than many artists do. I do have quite a broad range, and maybe too broad, and in some, I don't know,
I
maybe
mean,
it's
that's the
not.
best part about painting and art is there are no rules. You do whatever you
I have
want.
a lot
And
of different threads, and wear some different hats, but I think I need that though. Some artists are just more. I'm kind of a searcher. There's I kind of some artists approach art more like a religion, like this is the one true way to
mm,
paint, you know, and kind of stick with
like the
that.
purists of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm more of like a scientist
Hmm.
where it's like, well, let me try that. Let me experiment with that, take that to a certain conclusion, and just see where that takes me. And then once I've done that, then I'll try another line, another approach. And so even though I'm in this kind of representational, um, abstract representational sort of vein, I have tried a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. Like, what if I do it thick here? Or what if I have an underpainting? What if I don't have any underpainting? What if I um, use this surface? What if I use this type of brush or whatever? So there's a lot of what if I use it, totally change my palette? What if I limit the colors? And so everything that I've just mentioned here, I've spent a year or two on, and just going down that road and saying, what if, you know?
Yeah.
And so that has been something that has kept art alive and interesting for me, to continue to experiment and to um, shift things around and try new subjects. And like recently I have done, I started getting into the winter. I didn't paint the winter much. I was in California, and so,
No winter there.
no, not much of a winter there. But I've really been getting into snow and snow paintings, like this past winter, and or past two winters. And so it's just very limited palette, very, kind of a basic color, uh, but those relationships of value. So I've just been exploring certain things with that.
Hmm.
So that's just
Do
one
you
of the latest
do
things that I've done.
do you do your winter landscapes plein air?
Yeah, yeah,
Why I can't.
yeah. So and I just discovered that how much I actually love it.
Huh.
And at first it was like, oh, I want to go out there in the cold, and for years I didn't do it. Even when I moved back here to Utah, but then all of a sudden it just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go out and do it. So I go out there, and it's just this transformative experience. It's like so quiet and peaceful, and it just made my January so wonderful. So I'm going to be doing that for probably many years to come. But
I mean, and it's half the like the because I mean, obviously there's like the joke of I mean, Utah is like everyone's a landscape artist, but then like yeah, go outside. No wonder everyone's a landscape
yeah,
artist.
it's
And if you
beautiful out
only
here.
take in half of the year of like the good months when ignore
Right.
the others, then you're missing half of the coin.
Yes.
So I love that you were brave and did it because I still probably wouldn't. I'd be like, how do I paint with gloves on? How does this work? Or
Well,
do,
yeah, and you get the right gear, and you're okay. Even when it's freezing out there, you're just fine. As long you just had to dial into the right gear, and it helps. I ski too, so throw on your ski gear, and you're
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 good to
good to
go.
go. Yeah.
So I love obviously you were in San Francisco, I mean Bay Area for a good amount of time. I mean, how long were you there in total before you ended up moving back?
15 years
Okay,
before we moved back. So there was a significant amount of time, and I during that time there were only a few handful of plein air events. So people that don't know what plein air is, it means painting outdoors, painting from life, nature outdoors, and which was first popularized by the French Impressionists, and so that's why we use that French term plein air, which means open air. But in California, there's a strong tradition of plein air. Obviously, the weather is beautiful there, and there were some artist colonies that were set up. One in Carmel, also down in Laguna Beach, and so I started doing some of these plein air competitions.
hmm,
And this is when there were only a few of them, and now there's one in every state. And even here in Utah, there's like three or four
of course.
now. So uh, it's all over the place. And now there's plein air magazine, there's plein air convention, there's people are doing it.
Yeah.
It's like it's becoming like the new golf.
It's almost like if painting like traditional painting is to running, I feel like plein air is like the trail running version where you're like, oh, I
Yes,
want to get out and actually get in the middle of
totally.
everything.
Or mountain biking or
Yeah,
something,
exactly.
right?
And it's so fun to see because like one thing, and let's go back to golf for example. Like if I want to go, like if usually if I travel, I always have my golf clubs with me. I want to go see something pretty, I want to do it. And then you could almost have that same aspect. You're like, oh, I want to go on a trip specifically because I do want to go plein air painting in uh, Italy, France, Spain, like whatever that might be, you can add it to it. And maybe that's what you do when you're on family vacation. Like, hey, everybody go to the beach. I'm gonna go
That's
do
what I
something
do.
else. But like I get it. And like I honestly am envious of that because
Yeah.
there's so many cool, beautiful things that you can paint. And so I'm curious of like when you were in California, were you mostly spending a lot of time, I mean, doing plein air paintings in that kind of general area, or were you also traveling a lot and kind of wherever you wanted to go?
Well, yeah, I mean, at first, you're poor college students, so you're not going too far. Although I did serve an LDS mission in,
Okay,
in Italy, so I always had this connection with Italy, and I've been back many times. It's like a second home
definitely.
for me. I love Europe, and so and it has had a great influence on me too. Talk about another thread. I mean, there's so many threads that of inspiration that I can look back at. But uh, I got I have this serious travel bug. I I have to travel, like once a month, I have to go somewhere. I just got back from India, and that's my second time there. Like I said, I've been to China a bunch of times, and when Cuba opened for the U.S. citizens, I was down there. So I try and get around and see that's my goal, to see every part of the earth I possibly can. I'm super envious of David Attenborough
Uh,
because he has seen more of the planet than any other human, I think,
oh,
probably.
totally.
And I think that is the ultimate rich, wonderful life, is to be able to experience that. Now, I haven't been out in the wild as much as he has.
Hmm.
I do have an interest in the wild, but um, I have a really strong interest in cultures and in cities and things like that around the world. So that's one of the things I've really focused on is to see how people live and have developed their cultures, current and ancient.
Hmm.
And so I have spent a lot of times, seeing old temples and things like that all over the world, and also, just enjoying the food and the people and the cityscapes and things like that, and the busyness that's, like that's India,
Yeah.
you know, all the people.
And I'm sure it's fun. Like that's got to be such an interesting souvenir. If you're like, oh, someone's like, oh, yeah, how was India? You're like,
Yeah,
pretty good. Like this is what I
exactly.
decided to paint. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that when I go travel to a place. I mean, that's been my biggest muse, really. In my adult artistic career. Again, I started younger when I was interested in um, science fiction, fantasy sort of things. Then I moved into landscapes, and then traveling around and with plein air, and that became my muse. Just being out. And it's like pages in a journal. Like each painting that I
Hmm.
do is like, uh, this is where I was. This is what I experienced. This is what I felt. And it's kind of fun to go back through the years and like, oh yeah, that's when we went to, France, or that's where we went to whatever.
And it like even like layers on top of itself another level because again, like you're so experimental in your painting. It's interesting to go back, be like, oh, I know my travel history, but also I can see all like my changes in style, the
Yeah,
experiences, like the experiments that I was going through to land kind of where I am now. It's like it's got to be the most interesting journal ever.
yeah, yeah. And I need to start kind of putting that together, because there's so many paintings that I've done, and that I haven't cataloged necessarily, and so that's important. That'll be an important thing to do. I hate to have my kids try and untangle all of this, because it's like, oh, when did he go to Cambodia? Oh, I can't remember. You know,
Yeah.
so I need to make sure and do that. Because you have thousands and thousands of photos too that I take, and that I've been to some really interesting places that like just this last trip with India, we were able to go see an old tribe, the Toda tribe, and some of their structures are just really unique and
Hmm.
interesting. And to be able to go out and meet some of these people, even the people are from India, my guides, they couldn't speak their language either. It was just kind of neat to go see this kind of these a little bit more primal um, type of lifestyle, and see the structures they built, and kind of the art they created. And the religion that they had was kind of based around the a bison, and just that animal, and kind of the things, the relationship they had with it. So if I can keep doing that the rest of my life, it's gonna be a good life. That's
Yeah.
that's what I want to continue to travel, continue to I don't do these plein air competitions anymore. I did about 100 of them,
Ooh.
over a 10-year period.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like Iron Chef, where you go, they stamp all your canvases, and then you just paint like crazy, and then the end of the week you have a show. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth.
Yeah.
Met a lot of artists along the way doing all of that. I kind of retired from that. I got kind of burnt out, and so now I just plan these kind of trips that mostly me and maybe one other artist goes on.
That's the
That's
right way
kind
to
of
do it.
that's kind of because it's hard. The more people you add to, I mean, there's the funny saying is like, the fun of a trip is inversely proportional to how many people you invite on that trip, right? I tend to like to have fewer people, because then it can just be more limber, and we can kind of, I like to go.
I mean, especially if you're trying to, I mean, see as much as you can, paint as much as you
Yeah,
can, then it's like, all right, like let's like go.
yeah,
And
It's
no,
a dawn till dusk sort of thing. It's not like sipping, your drink and just kind of kicking back.
yeah,
For me,
it's
when
like
I
it's a
travel,
work trip.
yeah, no, but that's how I love it.
Yeah.
It's intense, right? So that's how, during one of these trips, I was in Italy actually. This is now 13, 14 years ago. My easel fell apart.
Oh no,
And part of it got crunched in TSA,
of
when we were
course.
drop kicking the bags or whatever. And that's when I decided I needed to have something like bulletproof. And that's where I started thinking about designing my own thing because I didn't see anything out there that could like really withstand the test of time. And so started prototyping, and I actually wasn't thinking of this in terms of a business. It really,
You
it
just
really
wanted to have
wasn't.
something that TSA couldn't mess up.
Yes, and started working on it. And my dad had a kind of a wood shop in the basement over Christmas between while I was in college and visiting. I just started working on this kind of prototype. But then I was like, this can't be in wood. It's got to be in something different. And this was when Steve Jobs was kind of at the height of his power. I think he was even maybe he had cancer at that point, and the biography came out, and I read that, and it was like, oh man, I need to make this out of aluminum. It needs to be like a laptop.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where Strata was like, you know,
Birth.
yeah, it was this idea like, oh no, it needs to be made out of metal because then it can be lightweight, it can be strong, and then it can be durable.
Yeah, makes sense completely.
So that's kind of where that whole thing came from. But it was,
Wait, one quick question on the plein air trips. So
yeah,
if you're again, it's you and another artist, you're in Italy,
or
dust.
it's with just my family, like my wife and kids. They would go. My wife would entertain them. They would be out in the field or whatever while I'd go paint, and it was great because when they were younger, they were totally satisfied with just like hanging out in a olive grove or something like that while I painted.
That's so fun.
Now that's a little tougher to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of these trips are at least me just going off by myself or, you know,
So on like a typical day like that, I mean, how many paintings are you doing? Because obviously, if you're, well, oh my
yeah.
gosh, I
So
forgot the term, all prima,
I'll bring it. Yeah.
alla prima, and like quick, then I imagine there's not just like one painting all day.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm slower now actually
Okay.
than I was. Because I have certain things that I'm after.
Hmm.
And so I'm more thoughtful, methodical. But there were times where, you do 4 a day, just 4 a day every day. And you do two in the morning, and then, take a nap, just to recharge. And then you break your day in half, right? And,
Yeah.
and, and the sun is, it's boring during the middle of the day. And then you come right back out around 5 o'clock and then, do two more paintings
That's so
to
cool.
paint till dark. So that's kind of the pattern that I had for many years. Now I would, on a trip, it would be more one in morning, one in evening, but I'm more thoughtful, more selective,
Makes
more
sense.
anyway, it's yeah, because I feel like I've done the volume
Yeah, you're like,
and I'm
I'm
not
good.
I'm good. I'm more about just, yeah, certain things. So
Cool.
I'm more selective and more picky about all of that.
I mean, definitely makes sense. So yeah, going back to the Strata. So you, I mean, obviously have this idea, and obviously you can't be the only artist struggling with finding some sort of easel that you can take with you everywhere. It can be, I mean, something you can use in your studio at home. It can be something that you take up a mountain or through TSA and be bulletproof. And so you had this idea for yourself, but at what point were you like, I think there's a couple other people that might be interested in this?
Yeah, well, it's interesting how it happened. And it happened actually fairly quickly because Um, so there was a first plein air convention, and this was in Vegas back in, oh gosh, 2012, 13, something like that. And so I had the easel that I made, and I actually I had it designed in plastic first because then I could make it. And then talked with a guy like, hey, can you actually design this? And can you do this in folded metal? Because this is kind of ultimately how I want it to be done. And finally convinced this guy, this manufacturer, to do it. And they're like, "Who are you?" Like,
Yeah.
you know, and and I don't even know how I could. It took a while. I kept bugging him for months because it's like, well, you're not a serious business or anything. And I wasn't. But I just was super persistent about it, and finally, they this prototype was mailed to me the day before I was going to do a demonstration at this convention.
Interesting.
So I was able to I had the kind of shiny new easel, and I debuted it right there at this convention, and that's when people were like, "Hey, what is this?
Yeah, I haven't seen this
I haven't
before.
seen it. I
Like,
haven't seen this
literally
before."
got it yesterday.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah,
first time I've used it.
it is. Yeah, really. The first time I used it was in the demo. So um, that's when people start asking, "Oh, well, are you going to make more of these or stuff?" And so um, we I started we did a batch of 50 to see, what happened. And I remember the first when I first like announced that, hey, we're going to be selling these just on Facebook,
Mhm.
right? A lady called or te- text or made some comments like, I don't know, this metal box, this the only thing this seems to be good for is warming tortillas or something like that. That was the comment they made, so that's it was just it was an it nobody ever seen anything like it,
Yeah.
right? And so I wrote back and I said, well, if you ordered, I'll throw in some oven mitts. And that person did. So we started, just slowly. A couple people were willing to take a chance on it, and it had some problems and issues, but I'm grateful there was enough people in that first order of 50, and it was a lot of money for me to put out for,
Yeah.
because when you make a product that's very small, like a small edition of it, it's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And so, and I this is all kind of a self-funded, you know, leap in the dark.
Yeah. You don't know what's gonna happen.
No,
You could end
yeah,
up
you
with
have no
50
idea.
easels
Yeah,
in your living room
exactly.
you don't know
Yeah,
what to do with.
yeah, exactly. And so anyway, it went well enough that I could make some changes and then put in another order. And so just slowly down the road, that's kind of how it all started. But
I just imagine this conversation later where you're like, hey, manufacturing guy, remember you said I wasn't a serious
yeah,
businessman? Here's my new order.
yeah,
You gonna say no now? Didn't think so.
exactly. Yeah, totally. So, um, and now let's see, it was last year, the year before, we celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Cool. Congrats.
And so things have been really well. It's really fun, gratifying to see that people all over the world have that are using it, and it's been on every continent pretty much, besides Antarctica. That's the only one where we're trying to get somebody to go down there. Maybe that's what I need to do, and just so we can claim that we've the easel's been on every part of planet Earth. But one thing that's been really fun with that just the easel company, which by the way, my wife is pretty much running the whole thing at this point. Um, I do a few things, but mostly, she's been invaluable for all this help, and obviously you saw that the assembly line,
Yeah.
kids have been involved and things like that. And
It's nice. It's a family
yeah,
family
yeah,
business, family ordeal.
family business, which has been really fun. But one of the things that in this process we have uh, invited, kind of people to have this. It's almost like a training group. It's like if everybody were doing a marathon together, and I call it the Strata Challenge. And we've been doing this for about 10 years now, where people paint or draw from life 30 days in a row.
Wow.
And so you have to do it 30 days in a row. And if you do it 30 days in a row and you have to post it every day on social media, if you do that, then you get entered to win one of 5 easels that we give away.
Oh, cool.
So we've been doing this for many years now, and it's really been fun because we have this big group now that is all dedicated in doing it. They're doing it all over the world, and in fact, I was in India and met two of the artists that did it, and
Interesting.
one of them that actually won an easel. So, and that was exciting to talk to him.
And I don't know if it's happened, but it's got to be gratifying in case you're like traveling somewhere in the world. You're going to like a popular-ish location where people usually paint, and you're getting set up, and all of a sudden you look over and they're like, "There's one of my
Yeah.
easels set up right next to me."
Yeah, it's always gratifying to see it in the wild,
No,
and it's
that's
fun
amazing.
when my parents or somebody else, hey, send me a picture, when they see one in the wild. That's always fun. But I love seeing them get used, and just the artwork that gets created. So, just in a given challenge that we do, Between 30 and 50,000 works of art are done in a month.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, just alone to inspire people to go paint like 30 to 50,000 paintings is
Yeah.
amazing in itself.
Yeah.
And to do that for 10 years over time, I mean,
That's a lot of
it's
work,
a lot of
right?
work.
Yeah, and so we have a Facebook group and stuff like that, and we what we do is we keep track of everybody too during the challenge
Hmm,
because we want to make sure everybody's honest about they've done it every single day. So
exactly. Yeah.
we always check and make sure, and that's just part of it, just to keep it as fair as we can because we know people work hard to
Yeah.
do this, right? And it's really cool to hear that some people have gotten through cancer during that time, or they've gone through some sort of struggle, or there's two people like a mother and son who that's how they're connecting across the world by their doing their paint both painting every single day. It's really fun and really gratifying to see that. And I've seen some people that have gone from this is just a total hobby to now they're going pro with
Yeah.
it. So I've really enjoyed that whole ecosystem that has occurred, and the people that I've met, and the community that has come together because of and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have this kind of easel product too.
Yeah. It's
So
funny how the most
that's been
random
fun.
things bring people together, but at the same time, to build a community, inspire so many people. I mean, through art, to help people get through these hard times or whatever that might be.
Yeah,
That's one reason I love painting because it is a therapeutic thing. It does,
totally.
because again, like my other life is so quantifiable, so structured, so everything that all of a sudden I'm like, all right, let's um, flip the switch and go pick up a paintbrush, and it's a whole different experience. And like I always try to convey that to people of like, hey, like, listen, I know you don't think you're creative. I know you don't think you can do this, but give it a chance
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised how I mean amazing and life changing it can be.
Yeah, and I think people that are listening here that may not, hey, I'm not a visual artist or whatever. I would say jump in, try it. I
Yeah, who
think
says who? It's probably your brain just telling you
I
that you
know, I
can't get
know.
there.
So, like my brother-in-law, we did a paint night here, and I know a lot of people are experiencing paint night. That's been kind of a fun thing to see. People learn how try painting. Just
Yeah,
for one
whatever
fun
it could,
night.
like
Yeah,
as simple as like innocent as it is, it's still
yeah.
painting.
So my brother-in-law, I mean, he's a big sports guy, and not that you can't like sports and art, because I do. I love sports too. But he had the best time. It's just so great to see that he didn't know he had any talent whatsoever, and he's like, this is awesome. This is so much fun, and it's fun to see people for the first time like go into it. And it's one of those things that can really help. I mean, it's very therapeutic. It's like I would say it's like a yoga practice because it involves your total mind, and it's a mind body sort of thing.
Hmm.
And so I think it's extremely healthy. You're outdoors too. Um, it's just really great. And so the majority of people that I've worked with over the years are and taught like workshops and master classes and things like that are um, either kind of a young professional or somebody that's retired and looking for something fulfilling to do. And it's been really gratifying to see how the people have just really taken to it, and it's become such a huge part of their life.
Yeah.
And they and it's life. It really is life changing, and kind of given people that didn't have a whole lot of purpose a purpose,
Yeah.
right? So that's I love that community aspect of it. That's one of the things, like you saw the studio, just the new studio built. The size is not necessarily just for me;
Hmm.
it's also to be able to have classes or have people come and do paint outs and things like that. I really love the community aspect of plein air painting. It's a lot of fun. So I talked to a bunch of people to come out in the winter painting with me this past January, and then we had about 80 artists come and paint when we were up here in Alpine. With we have the park. It's a poppy park that
Yeah.
all these wild poppies come out, and
So pretty.
so
Flowers are my favorite thing to paint.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
so it's you should come. You should definitely come next year.
Yes.
We'll be doing that. It's a lot of fun. So those um anyway, that has Strata is this Strata easel has become an interesting kind of a thread that has uh, another unexpected thing that's kind of come into my life that has I mean, it's been a burden at times, right? There are some challenges. I mean, when we went through COVID and sourcing materials and different things like that, it was just an
I can't even imagine.
enormous pain, and really kind of a stress. But for the most part, it's the community of artists and the people that I've brought into, almost like it's almost like a convert or something like
Yeah.
that, you know?
It's like this proud like moment of yeah,
Yeah,
converting someone to the beautiful religion of painting and art.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then they convert someone, and next thing you
Oh no,
know,
yeah, and it spreads. It's just fantastic. But um, that's been a neat part of it. So now, switching gears here, if you
please,
don't mind,
of course.
we kind of explored that space a little bit. So I do, going back to this kind of like Brandon Sanderson, and for those of you who don't know who he is, you should look him up.
If you're
He's
from Utah and you don't know who Brandon
yeah,
Sanderson is, you need to know who Brandon Sanderson
yeah.
is. Like there's so it was actually funny on the perfect segue to him. So I didn't really know who he was until someone at work had mentioned him. Like I've heard this name. He's like one of the best like fantasy art like writers, and he's in Utah. And then I mean talked to Howard about him, but then he posted a picture on Instagram of him and oh my gosh, what's the plays on the Spurs. He's like the next legacy
Oh
of
yeah,
compared and
Wimby, Wimby.
yeah,
Yeah.
picture of him and him like jersey swapping. I'm like,
What?
what is this world? But and like because
Yeah,
they're both fans of each other, which
yeah,
is amazing. Like that's the caliber of person that Brandon Sanderson is.
yes.
But yeah, so I love that that's come back and like it's come full circle with your like drawings from your childhood of all. I mean, fantasy and
Yeah.
abstract and
So
is
I have
now.
kind of fun story to share. So
Please.
when I was in college, I was going with a friend, Dan Wells, who's an author as well. Good friend of mine, and he wanted me to go um, and interview James Christensen. James Christensen is this fantastic artist. Some of you will know who he is. You have to look him up. He's passed away, but just one of the great Utah artists. And he was into fantasy art. And anyway, we went to interview him, and he's like, "Oh, and a friend of mine who's also part of this Leading Edge magazine, he's going to come and do it too." And that was Brandon Sanderson. So that's when I first met him, was back in college, and it was just this fun thing to talk to James Christensen. He was talking about fantasy and just how valuable it was, and as a genre. And so we were all jazzed, because all three of us were into it already. Interestingly enough, though, had forgotten that it was Brandon. Uh, I, because Brandon wasn't,
Brandon yet. Yeah.
no, not at all, right? And it wasn't until I moved back to Utah. This is 15 years later, and then because I was like, that had to have been Brandon. So then I finally talked to him and said, "Were you there at James Christensen?" That he's like, "Yeah, I was totally." And we talked about this one specific painting um, that James Christensen did called "Who TP'd the King." Basically, it was King Henry and then toilet paper all around him. It's just this funny,
Yeah, it's
just
fun.
great painting. But anyway, that was like, yeah, I totally remember that painting. Um, so it's just kind of fun that to when I came back, I kind of had this itch because I and my kids were starting to get a little bit older. They're totally into, Star Wars and things like that too. And so I was kind of doing some drawing stuff with them, and it kind of rekindled this childhood love of science fiction and fantasy. And so I started doing some of these, but more in this abstract sort of way, um, and taking all the knowledge I had from landscape painting and cityscapes and stuff like that, and start making these paintings. And then I was kind of, just kind of a closet doing this, not showing anything. And this, I told this other artist about it, this well-known artist that lives in LA, and he outed me on Facebook. He's like, he posted a kind of as imaginative sci-fi painting. He's like, now Bryan Mark Taylor's going to post one.
You're like,
So
that's
he
so funny.
called me out. But I'm glad he did,
Yeah.
because then I shared it, and and I wasn't planning, I mean, anything with it
Yeah, just
much,
some
but
fun,
yeah,
like another experiment that you were trying.
yes, and another experiment, and I loved it because I could be so abstract with it because like a spaceship could be any shape, right?
Mhm.
Or you can make up whatever. And um, I posted it like 5 minutes later. Somebody asked, want to buy it.
Like, I kind
I'm
of like how
like,
this works now.
like,
Yeah.
because it's so unique.
Mhm.
There's not really anybody that I am aware of that is doing these kind of abstracted science fiction fantasy sort of imagery. And so I've found this kind of a following of people that really enjoy that work that I'm doing. And it's really, I don't show in any gallery really. It's only I show it in certain groups on Facebook. And then there's one specific show that I go to that I discovered that is kind of this great group of people that loves the kind of things that I do. And It's back east
Cool.
in Pennsylvania. It's called IX show. Used to be called a LuxCon. And anyway, I've been able to kind of scratch that itch, and
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun. And I've just it was like I was a kid again. Kind of the burden of the galleries and things like that are released in
Which
some
goes
ways, and
away. It's just
yeah,
you and a canvas,
it's
just
just
your
me.
own
Yeah,
creative mind.
yeah, and just experimenting and taking risks, and I've just really enjoyed that. And so now some of that stuff has led to some work that I've done, in Brandon's books and things like that, which has been a lot of fun. And um, that's just been another little thread that has been something that I've really enjoyed. So there's a lot of different things that I've done over the years that I really to help keep it interesting, stay creative, stay experimental, stay like in that startup phase. Startups are so much fun, but then once you get into just corporate stuff,
Yeah,
it's
the
just
red
a bit
tape and the
hectic.
processes and
Yeah,
everything like that. No one enjoys that.
it's terrible. So I keep wanting to start new things and stuff like that. Actually, a couple years ago, we started me with another guy, Keith Wong. We started an online school, and so which is called Sentient Academy. So there's hundreds of lessons and things like that.
That's fun.
um, that there's a whole database of you can study with a bunch of different artists. And part of it because I was like, it's too expensive to go to art school nowadays.
Oh yeah. It's
It's
more of like a
crazy.
luxury than it is like,
Oh, it's so expensive. So um, now we can there's so much content right online. Obviously, everything's changed now. COVID changed, accelerated all of that.
yeah,
But back in 2005, I started helping the Academy of Art University develop their online art program. And they were one of the first to have their kind of curriculum put online. You could take
interesting.
online classes, but anyway, that was kind of that. I saw that's the future of that kind of education because
Hmm.
it's otherwise so expensive, right?
Yeah.
But I have I've really gone back to, even though now there's all this online content. Now I'm swinging back to going back into like personal interaction and personal. Maybe I got burned out a little bit
Hmm.
with during the COVID years over all the online stuff that we did, all the videos and things like that. So now I'm back to really wanting to have human connection.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people feeling that because I mean, there's just so many conversations I have recently where it's like, hey, remember how that happened? Like, because like it's almost like life has gone, the pendulum swing has gone back to like normalcy,
Hmm.
and then like we'll talk about it and like have that happen. Because like I'm the same way, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't want to Zoom anymore. I want to see people and have that. But I'm sure there's going to be a time where like, all right, now I'm kind of sick of everybody again. Let's go back to the screen. I really don't need to see you the same way I do.
Yeah. So I mean, it has its purposes, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, it's great to have this time where, with like a podcast like this, we can have these kind of interviews. We can have opportunities to meet these interesting people that maybe aren't going to be on NPR or something like that. Because maybe the niche isn't large enough
Yeah.
or scandalous enough or whatever it needs to be. You know
And
what I
like,
mean?
and that's part of the thing. Cause like I'll reach out to people and be like, okay, cool, just send me a Zoom link and we'll do it. I'm like, no, 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 I don't do that. Like I will always prefer in person. There's so much
Absolutely.
more rich of a conversation. Like, oh, I've never done one in person. I'm like, Well, welcome to the round
Yeah.
one.
No, and I prefer that too, absolutely, over the Zoom type of thing. I think, and that's where my mindset is at, is trying to have these like real connections, and that's what I want people to do too with the art. My art, especially because of this mark making and the way that it is layered, you really need to see it in person. Um, and of course, I show it on Instagram, I show it on all the social media and stuff like that, but I want people to come see it in person.
It's a completely different experience.
Absolutely. The thickness of the paint, the textures, the way natural light when it hits the painting, creates a certain mood with it. You just got to experience it in person.
And like
So
I think the thing that drove it home for me is when me and John went down to BYU to go see the Soroya exhibit that Micah got. And again, you could look at a picture of a Soroya painting and be like, "Oh, cool, here's a woman at the beach." Great. But then once you start looking at the marks and how like aggressive they are and how like with one simple stroke of one simple color it goes from fabric to like wet fabric attached to like the woman's side, and you're like, the
incredible.
completely different
Yeah.
experience. And so, I mean, go to galleries. If you haven't been to Anthony's,
You gotta
go
go.
and
Yeah.
just get Micah on any tangent you
I
can and
know.
just sit back and listen.
Oh, you know what? He is a national treasure. Seriously, he and his father. I mean, they know so much. I mean, if you live in Utah and you haven't been to Anthony's, you are missing out a major part of Salt Lake experience.
Totally.
I mean, they're just it. It's the best. It's really fantastic, and they do some fun things occasionally. They've done recently the candlelight thing, right,
Yes,
where they show all the artwork by candlelight because that's how it used to be seen, right? That's one of the ways it used to be seen, and so just the way they're recreating things to where you kind of step back in time, and especially in the 19th century, there's some amazing things that they highlight and know so much about that it just it's transporting, and it's a fun experience. So highly recommend it.
definitely. Um, Well, Brian, it's been an absolute amazing to get to know you. I mean, I've always loved hearing people's artistic journeys. I mean, especially how, I mean, you've gone through so many experiences, so many different teachers, so many different styles, and it's even more fun to see it come full circle from, I mean, kind of this childhood passion and then find that again. Because I'm a big believer in, I mean, go make your 8, 10, 12-year-old self proud,
Yes,
and you'll find it's crazy how those emotional connections, those, I mean, feelings are still there. And so,
yes.
and it's so rewarding and it's so gratifying at the same time. But kind of want to wrap up with the two questions I always ask everybody at the end. Is first is if you could have someone on the Small Lake City podcast and hear more about them and what they're up to, who would you want to hear from?
Well, that is a great question. Wow. There. I forget his name,
Okay.
but the guy that makes a mono chocolate.
Okay. We haven't had a chocolatier yet.
You haven't?
No.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forget his name, but I would just from the stories I've heard about him, I think he would be a very interesting guy to talk to. So I love. I mean, obviously, I love other artists, and I love to talk with them. But I also love to like manufacturers. And so like the Vanderhall group that
Mm,
manufactures the cars, I think that'd be very fun.
yeah.
Or Fazari,
The bike
the
company.
bike
Yeah.
company. So there's a couple people there that I think would be fun to talk to. There's also and you'll have to have Micah's help on this. Um, Again, I'm so bad with names, but uh, there's a few collectors I think would be really fun for
Hmm.
you to.
Yeah. Like the opposite end of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I think so too. I haven't thought about it like that. It's a good
yeah.
point.
So, um, of course, Vern Swanson. If you haven't interviewed him, I think he would be. He's a very fun person to listen to. Um, and yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody specifically that I would say, but I don't know. of course, I mean, you talked about having Jeff Hine on, and I think he's an interesting guy to talk to on a lot of levels. He and I think there's some kindred spirit in the sense that we like to be distracted artists and have other projects and other things we're building
Yeah.
or doing and stuff like that. And so, I'm just interested in people that have a lot of that curiosity, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think when I find a kindred spirit like that, that's curious about the world, not just their own narrow domain,
Yeah.
those are the people that I just gravitate towards. That ones that are like, oh wait, I want to know about that, and I love to, even if it's about law or accounting. If somebody, if whatever they're doing, I want to find out about it. What's interesting to you about it, and what do you hate about it, or what, you know?
Story of my life. I am the most curious. I'll be like, tell me more about this. Like,
Yeah,
I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But like, I just get so curious. I want to hear all about it. It could be the most boring thing in the world,
yeah,
but I'm still very
yeah,
curious and always want to expand my knowledge in that. So I
yeah.
understand that pull.
So, and I wander around, even like here in Alpine. There's a lot of creative stuff going on just right in here, and occasionally I'll see somebody working in their barn or whatever, or their man cave or whatever, and I'll just poke my head in. Hey, can I ask you what you're doing? I just love finding out what people do, because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of weird, interesting things, or maybe it's a business they're doing, or maybe it's just some crazy hobby. And oh, there is a guy, a woodworker that
Hmm.
you might enjoy talking to. He's an really interesting guy. He lives here in Alpine, and last name is Apostle. I forget his first name.
Sounds fitting.
Yeah, but his house is so cool.
Oh,
It's all custom, like custom joinery and
yeah.
everything. It's amazing. Um, but there's just people like that. That's what I love to
Yeah.
find, not only here in the U.S. but around the world. I love finding those artisans, those people that are carrying on traditions for thousands of years, like somebody that's weaving something, or somebody that's making a basket, or somebody that's carving this or that and the other. And I've collected a bunch of these, objects and things that I find when I find somebody that makes this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Like, I appreciate
I
your
love that.
craft. This is amazing.
Yes, and I love that
Thank
they're
you.
they're keeping the torch. They're
Yeah.
holding the torch, and a lot of times it's labor of love. They're none of them getting rich over it. But anyway, those are the kinds of people that inspire me. So I love that you're doing this podcast, and it's multidisciplinary. And I think it also will help. We'll find each other. These people that are curious about the world.
Without a doubt. Like, I mean, there's like the self-serving part of the podcast that I have where I do just be like, I want to sit down and pick your brain for an hour and hear all about it. It is fun. Like, every single person I haven't had a single episode where I'm like, well, that was a waste of time, or like they were super boring, or like I don't want to release this episode. It's always some sort of unique perspective, no matter who they are or where they're coming from. And so, yeah, the more that we can understand people, I mean, even in today's world, the more that we can understand someone, why they do it, there's a whole part of appreciation that you gain for that other person.
Hmm.
And so, the more that we can have these in person interactions and talk and chat and understand, and even if it's just listening to a conversation on a podcast, there's a level of understanding or almost feeling like you're in the room where you do get to experience that. And so, I'm glad that I've been able to provide that for people. Like, it's weird now, the people that'll come up be like, "Oh my gosh, I loved your conversation with so and so. I learned so much." I'm like, "You're welcome." Like, I too felt that. Like, and now we
Yeah,
can talk about it,
totally.
and it's been fun to experience so much. I'm so excited for the future. But yeah, Brian, if anybody wants to find out more about, I mean, your art, Strata, I mean, what's the best place to find them and
Yeah,
find you?
just going on my website, bryanmarktaylor.com, Brian with a Y. So, those three first names. Or just on Instagram, Bryan Mark Taylor. You can easily find me there too.
That'll do it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a Strata easel, take it through TSA, take it to the top of a mountain. Maybe in the winter, we'll find out, and get some more plein air paint because I think that's the next like step in
Absolutely.
my artistic journey.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Brian, absolutely great sitting down with you, getting to know you better. Thanks for having me. Yeah, excited for more to come, especially more of your abstract sci-fi fantasy stuff, and see where that goes as well.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. Brandon Sanderson's got his convention. You ought to come to that.
I should go to that.
It's going to be this December, and it's going to blow the doors off. It is called Dragonsteel. Anyway, I'll be there with my art.
Dragon Steel. Yeah, I'm gonna put that
Yeah,
on my calendar because that's absolutely a thing I need to go to.
yeah,
Well, cool.
super fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bryan. Yeah, keep on keeping on, and I'm excited to see what else you get done.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Salt Lake City Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, review, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And we'll catch you next week. We'll see you there.